In this video, you will learn how to run ChatGPT on many files. So in the end, it will look like this. It's a format that you can export into Google Spreadsheets or Excel or whatever you want. And basically every single line here is a ChatGPT response. And we're also going to show how to avoid paying double if you need to debug or run something again. And yes, this is a video. It's somewhat for technical people. So I would say you need to be at least a junior developer in order to run this code. Yeah, you can also just copy my code from GitLab from here. But if you're somewhat technical, I would recommend you to code this in your own language. You can use ChatGPT to help you along the way. It took me 4.5 hours of work, and so I believe you can do this too. And if you're not a developer, just hit me up and email me, and I'll try to get this tool to you for your use without coding at all. So in this video, you will learn how to use it, and we're going to do this right now on YouTube. I have a couple of commands prepared here, which we're going to go through in a bit. We're going to talk about the architecture of this tool in case you want to create your own AI software or like AI tooling, I would say, how to run the prompts, and basically how to use a prompt template so you don't need to always reinvent the wheel, and also how to extract this all into a spreadsheet like above. Quick backstory. So I wrote this tool because I got into a project, I had to take over a project, and there were just many files involved, and it was already grown a couple of months. And I could do some code analysis myself, and I had some idea about some parts of the system, but I wanted to get a holistic overview of all the files in the repository. So I thought I would just write a ChatGPT prompt, and it worked actually quite well. And then basically what happened, I thought, okay, so if it works for one file, why don't I just make some kind of output that is column based, so then I can have a holistic analysis over a whole file. And so I sat down on the weekend and wrote this thing, and now I'm going to show it to you as well. Important to know before we get started, this approach has a couple of drawbacks, of course, because we're only scanning one file at a time. That means if you have files, and let's say if you run this on code, right, you could run it on anything you want. You can run this on blog posts and anything where you need feedback that gives you metrics. But if you run it on code, sometimes you have code files that are interdependent. And so ChatGPT doesn't know the existence of another file when it analyzes one file. So that means that you need to take the results with a bit of caution, and it works better for larger files where you can just directly pinpoint this is an inconsistency inside the file. If you run it on smaller files, it's likely that you would get a file that's just dependent on other files, and then it maybe doesn't give you a really good accurate answer. So before we go into my design decisions, I want to show you the tool. This is the tool right now. It's basically just a folder. It's written in Ruby. We have a couple of folders that here, this is the data folder where I have the projects, they have the exports folder, and libs is the folder where we just have all the code that runs this thing. And again, if you want to look at this on GitLab, you can find this here and you can download it yourself. It's an open source repository. I didn't even put a license on it. I just uploaded it right now, but I'm going to do this in a bit. Okay, so how to run this thing. I wrote a README here, so you can check this out. You can install this by yourself. You just need an OpenAI token. And then let's just run through a couple of commands. So the first one would be just running the main file. Basically gives you all the options. Okay, now let's just make a new project. Now we have a project, and we can run this with list. So with list, it now shows us all the projects that we have. This is the previous one, which I'm not going to show right now. And this is the new project we have. And now we're going to add a file, a file set. So a file set is anything that you throw at it. Right now, the file set that we're going to choose here is the current folder, and this is the pattern matcher. So you can say, take this folder and pattern match only Ruby files. Let's add this. We added the file set, and now we have a couple of files here, 15 files from this repository. And now we could run a single thing, but let's just run the whole thing. And now it would basically tell me, we're going to run this on everything, so it's going to take some time. These are the text tokens. I'm going to explain to you a bit why I did it that way. And we have like an average response token. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much this will cost. So 20 cents, we need to type yes, and then we say yes, and now it's going to run it on couple of files. And we have a progress bar, which doesn't work really well, but we can just wait now and it would run this against OpenAI. Today, OpenAI announced the GPT-4o model. So I think the software is a bit in change. So sometimes it takes a bit longer. But there you see the first response comes in already. So we just look at the exporter and it gives us the response. Before we look into what this actually means, I'm going to show you, back to the blog post, I want to show you what kind of prompt we wrote. You can read it yourself, but the basic idea is you are a skilled software architect. You have a deep understanding and best practices of design patterns. I'll provide you a code snippet below in Ruby, analyze it and provide me the following JSON as JSON format. That is super critical because if it's not JSON or something that's machine readable, we cannot process it and put it back into a spreadsheet. And then we ask them, you need to only give me these answers. Tell me all the things that are neutral, all the minor problems, all the critical problems, and then give me a score of severity from 0 to 1. So this is like a percentage, and a certainty score, how sure you are. And then I would tell them, here's the code. This is important. Okay. So now we are running this thing and you see the responses are coming in. Let's look at one. Okay, so we have projects. So it's our project file. We can look at it right now. Project, it's model CLI projects. Okay. This is just something this is the tool that I use in order to make the CLI. It's called the dry CLI package, the Ruby gem. And it's very simple. I mean, it doesn't do much. Let's see what it says. Okay, so it has some problems with the constructor and so on. Okay, blah, blah, that's fine. The method call has data processing output. Okay, interesting. So this is not a problem right now for us because we really just want to show the CLI output. But if you look at it, it does make sense what they say, mixing business logic with presentation logic. And then, yes, of course, this is a hard-coded path. Why do I have the hard-coded path in there? Okay, this is just because where I store the data. What would they suggest? Okay, yes, sure. So better put it into some kind of constant or so. Severity 0.7, certainty 0.85. Okay, I think this is actually fine. This is a good output. If I could now decide if I want to act on it or not, but it is definitely accurate what it said. Okay, perfect. So I want to quickly now explain how this tool is written so you get an idea about the architecture. I don't know, this might be helpful if you're coding your own tool. And again, you can check this code out on GitLab, gitlab.com/tillcarlos. Okay, how we store the data. So the basic idea I had here was that the data should be stored in a JSON. And what I wanted to do is have file sets. The file sets are here right now. We only added one file set, which is the dot repository, so like the current folder. And I wanted to do it that way because I had a repository where I wanted to throw in first the Ruby files and then run them. And then I had the idea of throwing the JavaScript files at it as well. So I wanted to continuously expand my project, and it wouldn't be enough to only have one file set pattern. So I mean, I could have made some very complicated regex, but I think for me it was nicer to have a couple of things that I can append to the project. Good. And then the files, how the files are stored is like this. So a file belongs to a file set just because I actually want to see where the file comes from. So we need to combine this one with this there. And also the directory, I should have given it an absolute path. It would have been better, but for now it's fine, it works. Okay, and now the interesting stuff. So this is actually the analysis that we're going to use later. This is the things that we're going to throw into the spreadsheet exporter. So this will become a CSV later. And here's also the certainty score. And now this is interesting. We have the usage, and this comes from the GPT output. We have the model, and we have the usage, and also we have the MD5. MD5 is super crucial, and I want to show you why. The MD5 is the MD5 that we store in the JSON database is the MD5 of the prompt with the code together. So we can look at this real quick. Let's say we looking at this file here. Okay, so let's just start from here and cut all the stuff out that I said before when I struggled. The MD5 is used to store the prompt and the response. So let's say the prompt here is actually the prompt that we combine from this and the actual code. So this is now from another project. And the prompt is stored here in the world-class dev. So the prompt is in text form here, and then the code goes in here. So this is a variable that gets replaced. And the response also gets stored, or gets stored here. Okay, why we do this? The reason why we store them as hashed is that if we want to run something again while you're coding the tool, is now you can actually run a prompt again and the MD5 will match and give you the output right away. So let's assume I don't like the way my database is structured. I could throw away all the data, but rerun that thing because the file has been taken on before. Once I just change one small line in this prompt here, the MD5 then changes, and if I would run it again, I would then need to create a new MD5 file and also hit up the API in order to get me a new response. So that's my way of caching it, and I think it helped me a lot while I coded it because I had to sometimes run things over and over again. And I think this is definitely the way to go. Of course, you need to see how much customer data you want to store, so it might be better not to cache it if it's sensitive data. But in my case here, it's actually quite good to do so. Okay, and then we can have a look. So we just run everything. We can have another look at the file. And now we see files to do 0. So we did everything. And now we can export that thing with a Ruby export into exports. Okay, so now we have the file. And I'm just going to open this and it will come up somewhere on my... Okay, so now this is our export as CSV. All the files are in here. And we see how many critical errors do we have. Okay, we have a couple of critical errors, but they're all not so severe. This one is the worst one. Let's look at it. Prompt generator. The template is hard-coded and so on. Method merge. Yeah. Use ERB without sanitizing validate the template input data. Okay. Injection vulnerabilities. Of course, this should not be production code, but running it on my local machine is totally fine. Cool, so this was the introduction to the tool. Maybe a couple of more things that are interesting for the architecture. I have another thing that stores the cost because I wanted to have the preview of the cost. That's the thing that you saw previously. Pricing. This is just a simple class that calculates the cost. I think this just went down after the GPT-O model released. And yeah, this makes the cost preview. Also, the cost preview goes hand in hand with having the text tokens also being stored in the database. So that way we don't need to run the prompt in order to know how much tokens we're probably going to burn with that. So we actually have the price overview, which you saw before. And the exporter is also checked out the code if you need to see how you want to write an exporter. It might help a bit, and that's the final result. So again, if you have questions to the code, you can send me a message or you can leave a comment under the YouTube video. This would be amazing. And if you want to have that tool to use for yourself without coding anything, just send me an email. And if there are enough people coming, then I might just make it for you. Thank you, guys.